regarding the third verse, I had already explained how um, the fact that Elohim rested on the seventh day, it depends on the level in which you want to interpret it. The lowest level, which would be the most simple, the literal, is just the fact that the Almighty Creator stopped creating. And the fact that He stopped is basically when He rested. Not that He needed to rest because He doesn't get tired. It's just the fact that He stopped, so He entered the rest. Also, another interpretation uh, is the fact that when He came to the seventh day, He created um, what we know as resting. He created the fact, uh, He created the feeling that we get in the idea and the concept, I don't know how to put it, of what we do when we go on vacation. Basically, we rest when we go to sleep. So the fact that us as humans do get tired made it so that Yahweh would think about that and give us the rest. And I just wanna, the point here is the fact that it's not only the day of rest, the Shabbat, in which we should rest from material work to start working on the spiritual life, which is not work in the physical. And well, in Isaiah 58 is where the real Shabbat, or the way to fulfill correctly the Shabbat, is explained in all the books of the scriptures. Um, but like I said, the Almighty Creator obviously doesn't need to rest because He doesn't get tired. Us humans do need it, so that's why He created it on the seventh day, and that's why He finished the work on the seventh. I say that because many have found that as a contradiction, saying that He only created on 6 days. So why does the scripture say that He blessed the seventh day? Because on that day He rested from all the work which Elohim created. On the second verse, when He said, and on the seventh day Elohim ended His work. So some people tend to see that as a contradiction, not understanding that the seventh day is included in creation because He created rest. Other than that, even deeper or maybe more complicated interpretation is what I also explained a little last week about the fact that the title Elohim is used also when it comes to the angels, not only to the Almighty Creator. Elohim is a title that means mighty ones, but is normally used with judges or entities with authority as a judge. So the title Elohim can be used with angels, and not only can it can be used with angels, it's just the fact that it is used with angels all throughout scriptures. The problem is that in our languages they have translated the word Elohim as God. Elohim is plural, God is singular. So just that makes a lot of difference, uh, depending on the context. We should read and understand that is either Yahweh working through angels, or Yahweh being called Elohim, being called by a title, or simply angels working. Those are the three cases that we see in scriptures, but in those three cases they write the word God. Therefore, normally the only interpretation that people get is that Yahweh did something, because they, unfortunately, they got rid of the name, got rid of the correct titles, and they put on the scriptures God, and they put Jehovah and stuff like that. So those wrong translations have caused this issue, that in the verses that could be interpreted in three different ways, or in one of those three different ways, depending the case, the context, etc. When they translated the word Elohim as God all the time, makes it so that people do not understand those three, but only one. They see directly Yahweh doing something. When we understand that Elohim is a title, and that the title Elohim is also used with angels, then we can understand a deeper meaning or revelation regarding a verse like this, for instance. If humans need to rest, is because we are part of a temporal reality in which there is work and rest, or movement and rest. In the reality of the Most High, both are one. Here we have right and left, we have up and down, we have cold and hot, and the rest of things. All things in this world have a counterpart, man and female. In the reality of the Most High, there's only one, Yahweh. That's why it is written, Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Listen, Yisrael, Yahweh, our Elohim, our mighty one, is one. So when we understand that he is one, we understand that his will be done on earth as it is in heaven, because in his reality there is only truth, there is only unity. When we start going down levels or heavens until getting to earth, that unity starts to separate through those dimensions, or the illusion of separation begins to manifest. And that is when we see basically angels that do the will of the Most High, who is one, but his will, for instance, divides in these angels need to do mercy, these angels need to go and do justice, these angels need to punish, etc., etc., etc. So in that case, we should understand that Yahweh works through the angels in our reality. As I was saying, us humans, we live in a reality that is temporal, and it has work and rest. We have both. We can only do one at a time. So that has to do with a temporal reality that has a beginning and an end. It has to do with the fact that we are in a body made of matter, which is heavy. So when we do things, we get tired because we are pulling matter and stuff like that. So we get tired because of just action. That's why we rest. My point is, in the middle reality, or the second heaven, which we cannot see with our eyes, but does have a type of matter, like scientists call it dark matter, is a type of matter, but it cannot be seen with our eyes. That's why it represents the third heaven that is invisible. So, in the sense that it is invisible to us, is why it represents the third heaven. However, in its own reality, it is a lot like this reality, made of matter, because it's a reflection of the third heaven. The angels, like I explained last week, will not enter the eternity, the world to come. The only way they can enter the world to come is through the congregation, and that is a little bit hard to understand right away. I understand there's a lot of things that we need to take into account when it comes to that, but to explain it in a very simple way, and we will read more about it. When Noah was chosen, he built an ark with trees, right, with wood, and in the ark, all humans who were going to be saved entered, which were 8: Noah, his 3 sons, and their wives, representing a new beginning, the 8, eternity, etc. But with them enter all animals. As I have explained, man was created in the image and likeness of Yahweh. However, animals were created in the image and likeness of the angels, spirits, demons, etc. So when Noah entered the ark with all those animals, that represents the end times, when the last and the congregation, as the family, will enter the reality that Yahweh will create, eternity, for us, as if it was an ark, and the animals that enter with Noah basically representing the angels. That's why Yahweh said that just like in the time of Noah, he shook the heavens and the earth. In the times of Noah, he shook the earth, but in the days that are to come, in the last days, he will shake the heavens and the earth. So what he did to the world in Noah's time, he is about to do not only on earth but in heaven. Meaning, just like he killed everything that was on earth because it was full of sin and impurity and all of that, now he's going to destroy on earth and heaven, because in heaven angels have rebelled, and those angels that will go through to the next stage, the only way for them to do it is through humanity, through the humans. And so I was saying that just to explain that even though the reality of the angels has lasted all our history, so every angel that was in the beginning of history when Adam was in the garden, still somewhere now in the end times, even though many humans have come and left, that is because they are supposed to represent the third heaven, which is eternal. They are messengers. When the Almighty becomes one with humans, messengers are not going to be needed. That's basically the point. So that reality of the angels will disappear as it is right now. It's going to be new at that moment. It's still going to exist, but it's going to be new. So angels, like humans, need some type of rest, just like they need some type of food. Just like we eat food, we eat the flesh of animals. The sacrifice that people would do, and they still do, when they sacrifice an animal, the smoke, the blood that is spilled, and the energy that comes out of that body when it's killed is what feeds these entities. So they eat, they feed, but in a different way than humans. Still, they have to rest, but in a different way than humans. And not because of the same reasons, but they are very similar. I'm saying all of that, and I'm sorry if I extended it too much, because the third interpretation here is that Yahweh, through Elohim, plural, worked on earth, and those Elohim needed to rest, or that Elohim, if we want to see the leader, we want to see it as the leader of the angels. And that's why it can also be interpreted like that. There was an angel who actually rested on the seventh day from the beginning of creation, the angel that was in charge of doing the material work so that Yahweh could fill it with the spiritual. And that one had to rest. Yahweh, through him, by him resting, wrote this for us to understand that in that moment Yahweh created rest for humans. So, and Elohim blessed the seventh day also. Another thing to say, and I'm going to close with that part at least. That is why Yahushua, when he was asked why he was healing people on the Shabbat, he said, "My Father has worked until now, and I must work." So Yahushua was saying that, like I said earlier, what we need to do on Shabbat is rest from the work of the flesh so that we can concentrate on the work of the Spirit. When we work on the Spirit, we receive the peace that surpasses all understanding. We actually rest when we work in the Spirit. I hope that is being clear. So Yahushua said that Yahweh had worked until that moment, meaning he has never rested. He has never stopped working. He has never stopped creating. So, like I said, the one that stopped working in the literal sense, in the physical, was an angel. An angel in the second heaven who was being who had been created for this job, basically. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. This is also interesting. In the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. This is the first time in this verse, the fourth, is the first time in the scriptures that the name Yahweh appears. Yahweh Elohim. Because now Yahweh is adding mercy to creation. Because previously, when only the title Elohim was used, it was when he was going to create it in justice. However, he foresaw that if he only made the world in justice, he would end up destroying it because of the sins of humans. So he added mercy, which is represented by the name Yahweh. Also, it is to show us that in the first chapter, it is mainly focusing on the physical, material creation. On the second chapter, it's going to focus on a higher level of the creation. So it repeats certain parts that were already mentioned, but in more detail or from the perspective of men. So on a higher level. That's why the name Yahweh is now included. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. Here is saying in the day that Yahweh Elohim. So we're saying one day. And we know that it is written in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. So in the first day, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And already in that first day, all the generations of the heavens and all the generations of the earth had been created. So here we have confirmation of something I have explained before, the fact that angels also multiply. Like I have said, Hillel, known as Lucifer, is son of Samael, who was previously known as Ariel. So the generations of the heavens and the earth, those that came from the angels, those that came from Adam. It could also be understood in a deeper interpretation, when we include predestination, the generations of the heavens would be the chosen few, and the generations of earth would be the many. Many like the sand by the like the sand of the sea, like the dust of the earth, and the generations of the heavens shining bright like the stars in the sky, as we see in Daniel 12. So that is another interpretation. But my point was that even from the first day, already, all the generations of heavens and earth had been created. Yahweh had already seen each and every person that would exist in all history. So this verse 4 is taking us back all the way to the first chapter, or to the beginning of creation, because it is saying, in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. When was that day? The first day. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. So my point, chapter 1 verse 1 is connected to chapter 2 verse 4. In, like I said, in the first chapter is focusing on the material, the physical. That's why it only mentions Elohim. Now in the second chapter is focusing on the living creatures, mainly men. That's why first it mentioned, in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth, and now it's saying these are the generations of the heavens and the earth. So first he created the space in which the people or angels would live. In the second chapter we're seeing those entities that would fill the space which Yahweh created on the first chapter. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. In the first chapter, we see the word created. In the second chapter, we see the word made. Because, remember the 4 levels of creation: Atzilut, which is emanation; Beriyah, which is creation. So, emanation is when Yahweh thought of creating. Then, he made the material world, space and time, during creation. And now, in the second chapter, when he's filling the world with the generations, the word that is used is Yetzirah, made. So that then history can happen in the 4th level, which is action, or Asiyah. So in the first chapter, Yahweh uses the word create. In the second, the word made. Meaning, just also like when you think of how you're going to do things, like when he thought of it, when he wrote it, and then when he spoke it. So, he thought of it, he wrote it, he spoke it. It came to be. Those are the 4 levels. The first chapter, by saying created, is starting from the 2nd level. The second chapter, 3rd level, formation. So when he gave form to that which he had created in his mind, in his will. And then when Adam starts to act and multiply, that is the 4th level, action. In the day that Yahweh made the earth and the heavens. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, For Yahweh Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. There was not a man to till the ground. So we see right there that we restarted the account of creation, because at this moment there is no man. But in last chapter we saw that Adam was created. So when Yahweh said, right here, these are the generations, he's restarting all the way, but now with that which will fill that space which he created. He mentions the generations. In the day that Elohim made the earth and the heavens and every plant of the field before he was in the earth. Every plant, he created the potential for the plant. As if, I'm not saying this is the case, but I'm just trying to give an idea. As if he had created the seed, but the plants had not come out of the earth. So he created the potential. He created the essence. Because also remember that the sun was not created until the fourth day. So plants were created previously. The potential. Once the sun came out, they would start growing. And, well, I almost get ahead of myself, so I'm going to read. And every plant of the field, before it was in the earth. And every herb of the field, before it grew. For Yahweh Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth. So, in the beginning, rain was not part of the cycles of nature. It worked different. This is one of the reasons why when Yahweh announced that there will be a flood, for Yahweh Elohim had not caused. This is the reason, one of the reasons why when Yahweh told Noah that rain would fall and destroy earth and the people in it, many people did not believe Noah, because they didn't think that that was possible for many reasons. One of those, that it didn't rain before that. However, there is one account in the Midrash. If I am not mistaken, there's a little bit, or at least some type of reference in the book of Yashar, and in other writings, that in the time of Enosh, there was a small flood that flooded a third of the earth. And that was an announcement that it would happen if they did not behave. Basically, they started sinning and sinning and sinning, so Yahweh sent a part of the flood in the time of Enosh, which flooded a third of the earth, but only a third. And because of that, there were some people that were able to save themselves, of course, doing certain things. And when Noah started preaching, some either believed that that wouldn't happen because there was no rain, at least it wasn't normal, just had happened once, and many thought it was just a fluke or something. Others believed that they could save themselves by doing something like going to a mountain or building a high tower. The giants thought that they would save themselves just because they were giants. There were many things that humans or giants in that moment thought that they could do to save themselves from the flood, so that's why they didn't believe Noah. But one of them was the fact of rain not being a normal phenomenon, basically, in that time, like it is nowadays. It is the most normal thing for us. Back in the day, it wasn't. It had just happened once. And one of the reasons I mentioned this about that there was a partial flood before Noah's flood, and why I believe it, other than the fact that the writings that I have read regarding it seem very mm, well. They have good basis and are trustworthy, and well, one of them is inspired. So um, I do believe it, but like I said, one of the reasons is that Yahweh said that the days of the Son of Man would be like the days of Noah. So in the end will be like in the beginning. The last, the witness like Moshe will be like Noah. He would preach of an end. However, Yahushua also said that the days of the Son of Man would be like the days of Lot. In the days of Lot, the Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed by fire that rained from heaven. Something that never had happened, and it has never happened since. So a lot of people don't even believe that that happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. So they don't believe it even though it happened. That was the announcement for the fire that will rain in this end of times. So just like in the time of Enosh, there was an announcement of a world flood by a partial flood. Then in the time of Lot, there was a partial um, judgment through fire. And now in our days, there will be a world judgment through fire. I hope that's clear. So, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for Yahweh Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. So since there was no man to till the ground, this verse 6 is going to say what I was going to explain. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. So instead of raining to make the crops grow, and the herbs and plants and everything grow, Yahweh would cause a mist to come from the earth to water the whole face of the ground. There is a theory regarding this verse, and I don't want to get too complicated with it, even though it may happen. In let me see how I started. In Isaiah 34, there is a creature that is mentioned once in the entire scriptures, just once in the whole scriptures. And it's called Lilith. Many perhaps have heard of her, maybe not. There are some who believe that Lilith is the first female creature with human shape that was created before Eve herself was created, who was the first woman. So Eve, or Hava, would be the first woman, no doubt about that. But before her, there was a creature with a female body that didn't make it to humanship. She didn't become, or she didn't receive the honor of being called a human, and therefore she didn't receive the honor of being called a woman. She remained in the realm of beast, with the shape of a female. Female person, in that case, woman. But I just want to make this separation between Eve, or Hava. She is the woman because she came out of the men. Men. A man with a womb. That is the woman. Eve is the first woman. However, before her, there was another female who did not come from the men. So she is not a woman. She was just a female. She did not want to subject to Adam. So Elohim took her from Adam and from the plan that he had. He basically gave her an ultimatum and she didn't accept uh, the will of the Most High. So she rebelled and became the mother of the demons. I hope that explanation at least was clear. In Isaiah 34 is where she is mentioned. However, in most translations, her name is not mentioned. Instead, is replaced with the name of a animal. Maybe, um, maybe they just didn't know who this entity is, and so they thought it was an animal, and they just decided to put the name of an animal. I don't know. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they did, and they just tried to confuse. But whatever reason it may be, the name is in the Hebrew of the book of Isaiah. But when they translated it to English, they changed it, and they wrote just one animal. Well, in the English version, at least the King James version, the New King James version, they write night creature. So at least they try to translate it. They really tried. And I say at least because in the Spanish version, they just wrote an owl, which is an animal of the night. Lilith sounds like or comes from Laila, which is night. That's why they translated it in English as night creature, because she became a creature of darkness, the mother of the demons that work at night and that feed from the sexual energy of female and male, the succubus and the incubus. The incubus is the one that works in females, and the succubus the one that works in males. So why am I saying all of this? Because there is an opinion or an explanation regarding this verse that we were reading, number 6, that it says, "But there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground." The word that is translated as ground in Hebrew is Adamah. Adamah is basically the female version of the name Adam, because Adam was taken from the Adamah. Adam was taken from the ground. That's why the body becomes dust when the person dies. So, since Adam was taken from the ground, and ground in Hebrew is Adamah, female version of the name Adam, this word is connected to Lilith, some connected to Lilith, as if it were her previous name. Before falling from the favor, before rejecting Adam and therefore Yahweh, before being expelled and everything that I just explained, she was called Adamah, according to some. I just want to make sure that you understand the simple interpretation that everybody knows as Yahweh creating and taking a piece of the ground to make the body of Adam, and then from Adam taking Eve, and then them getting married. All of that is right. That is the simple interpretation. My point is here trying to teach you a deeper interpretation and what is the opinion of some regarding some words, like in this case Adamah. So it is the opinion in this theory that just like Yahweh, as we will see a little bit later, as Yahweh sent his spirit to enter the nostrils of Adam and give him life, so Yahweh sent the Ruach to enter Adam to give him life. The opinion here when it comes to this verse is that when he says that went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground, they believe that the mist, the word in Hebrew is pronounced et, aleph, dalet. It is translated as mist, vapor. Yeah, vapor. So just like ruach, which is wind, came from heaven and entered Adam, now we are seeing that a vapor came up from the earth, from the ground. Well, from the earth and entered the ground, meaning a vapor came from the ground and entered Adamah. So some believe that just like a spirit came from heaven to give life to Adam, a spirit came from down under, and not Australia, came from the Abaddon, or the bottomless pit, the ground, and enter the body of a female called Adamah. That is what some translate from this verse. And I see it as very possible because of what have a study regarding it, and when we see it in Hebrew word by word and other things. So that's why I'm saying it here, of course. It is funny that the word went up is Allah. And as we know, Allah is how they call the God that Muslims worship. Who we know is not Yahweh, is not the Creator, is not the Almighty, merciful Yahweh. It's a different entity. So it is interesting to find a similar word here when we are discussing this interpretation. Be'ed y Allah, and a vapor went up. There is another word in Hebrew, by the way, that it is also pronounced Allah, just like they pronounce the name of their Elohim in Islam. And that word in Hebrew means curse. So imagine that. So then it says here that from the middle of the earth had Aretz. And it watered the Adamah, the whole face of the Adamah. So just like wind, Ruach, came down from heaven and entered the nose of Adam, now we're seeing a vapor that went up a lot from the earth, the lower reality, the lowest reality, and enter the face of Adamah. I hope that is being clear, because it's saying face when it comes to the ground. Just like it entered through the face of Adam, now there is a vapor entering through the face of Adamah. So a vapor went up from the earth and watered the face of Adamah. When I read it like that, you can see how it can be understood in a similar way, that when a ruach, a wind, came down and entered the face of Adam. Interesting that in this case he's saying watered, Because remember that females, when they are going to give birth, their water breaks. Their babies are in water during 9 months. When a man puts his seed in a female, he does it through semen, which comes in a liquid form, so it's basically water entering the woman to impregnate her and give life, new life. So when we account that also, we're talking about a female called Adama, who was water, whose from her face was water by a vapor that came from down, from below. Sorry. So, but there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. In the literal sense, what I explained earlier, since water was not coming down as rain, vapor would come up from the earth. That's the simple way. Verse 7. And Yahweh Elohim formed men of the dust of the Adamah. Formed men from the dust of the ground. So, as we can see, when we interpret it in the deeper way that I was mentioning, verse 6 mentions female, Adamah. Verse 7 mentions male, Adam. So it is important to see also the context. There is a reason why Yahweh said that that the earth was water by a vapor that came up. And right after, he's saying that man was formed. There is a connection when we look at the Hebrew and deeper interpretation of the previous verse. And Yahweh Elohim formed men of the dust of the ground. Form 4 levels. Yetzirah is the 3rd level. From the highest to the lowest, Yetzirah is the 3rd level. So, it is in this level, like we just saw. Yeah, in Yetzirah, he formed men of the dust of the Adamah. It is interesting that it says dust. Normally dust is dry. The Adamah was watered by the vapor that came up. And if that vapor that came up was a negative spirit, the watering that was done in that interpretation would be a negative, would have a negative connotation. So the fact that Adam was created from the dust, not from mud, and I'm just want to make sure that we understand that I'm mentioning this because of the words that are being used specifically. Even though, of course, we are made of water, a huge percent. Therefore, if we are made of dust and mixed with water, we could say we are made of mud or like clay also. But in this case, is the context is word by word, so that we understand there is a reason why each word is there. So in this case, if the water Adamah has a negative connotation, now we have dust that Yahweh used, dry, to make men and fill it with ruach, which would be positive. And that's why we would have here the negative female and a positive man, from whom eventually a woman will come, a woman. Yeah, that's why I'm saying that is the literal. And when I say that there are different interpretations for one verse, one doesn't cancel the other. They are all valid. The literal is obvious, is really obvious, and is what everybody understands. I'm just trying to explain how that verse is used to support the belief of the creation of an entity called Lilith. An entity that is mentioned in Isaiah, so it does exist. According to scriptures, that entity does exist. Now the question is when that entity was created and how it was created. When we look at scriptures, there are many verses that point to the creation of that entity. That this is one of those verses. However, this is maybe the most cryptic one, or the most mysterious one. So I understand, and that's why I wanted you guys to ask any questions, because this is the most cryptic one of all those verses that can be used to support the belief that the entity called Lilith in Isaiah 34:14 was created before Eve, before Hava. In that case, if you because of the question that you may, Celio, remember that in the book of Revelation, the trees represent the chosen few. Also remember that it is written that men will live like the trees. They will have age like the age of the trees. Also remember that the tree that doesn't give fruit or good fruit will be thrown in the fire. When Yahweh says that, he's talking about men. Trees represent men. Also, herbs represent men, because it is written that men who do not do the will of the Most High will be burned like herbs or like dry plants in many verses. I'm paraphrasing some and using others, but the fact is that all throughout scriptures we see that plants, trees, represent humans. That's why Yahweh said that he gave of every tree that gives seed. We see in scriptures that man gives seed. So we are like trees. So there are many reasons in scriptures why we are like trees. So now when we understand that and we take it all the way with that interpretation in our head, we can go back to the 5th and say, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth. Just like Yahweh in the 4th, he says, and the generations, meaning and the descendants. And then he says, and every plant. So one could say, if we were going to use the same argument, Celio, we could say, why is he talking about plants if he was just talking about generations? There is a reason why everything is set up in that order. And that helps us, and making those questions will help us to make connections to understand deeper revelations. So he first talks about the generations, then he talks about plants. And remember, plants represent humans. So one can interpret this as he's talking about generations, and then he's talking about literal plants. We can also understand it as he's talking about generations, who would be represented by plants. He created all the generations, even though they were not on earth yet. He created all souls, even though they had not entered bodies. He created all humans, even though they had not come to earth. Adam wasn't even created yet. I hope that is being clear. So these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. They were created second level. In the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth. Made. Lower level. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth. And every herb of the field before it grew. Like I said, every soul before it entered a body. Every person before he entered his or her generation. For Yahweh Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth. For Yahweh had not caused the blessing to fall upon the earth. He had not caused his teaching to come to humans. He had not made the souls to come to earth. In Judaism, it is taught that there was a main soul, the soul of Adam Kadmon, basically. Well, that is a little bit more complicated, But there was a soul which came down to this lower dimension, and when it came down, it crashed and it broke, and it divided into millions of pieces. So that one soul became millions of souls, or billions. And it's basically like the soul that came down to enter into Adam. And when Adam sinned, created division within himself. And that division within himself manifested as each of the humans that would come out of him through Hava, or Eve, and fill this earth. So that sin that Adam did, the fact that he ate of the fruit of knowledge, now through each of his descendants would be rectified little by little. Basically, Yahweh gave the work to men to rectify the world. It was too hard for Adam, so that work was divided among all humans. Of course, Yahushua came and paid for our sins. But still, we need to do our work. Each of us has a ministry. Each of us has a job to do in his or her life. So, that job that each of us has to do, the fact that we have to become better persons, is part of the rectification of the world, which broke when Adam sinned. So that's why I'm trying to explain that this can be understood in a metaphorical sense, because I believe the literal is very clear. And I think it's very clear, and that is basically the one way that is taught by most people. So I don't think that it needs much explanation. I'm just trying to focus on the complicated one. For Yahweh Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. There was not a man to till the ground. What does the tilling of the ground create or causes? For the ground to give fruit. Therefore, a man tilling the ground. And what is the ground? Adamah. Basically the female version of Adam. So what would, in a metaphorical sense, mean for Adam to till the Adamah? To give fruit. For the ground, for the Adamah to give fruit. Basically is because there was not a man to mix or have sex, mate with the Adamah, with the female, in order to give children. For the generations to manifest on the lower dimension. And every person would be a plant. Remember that actually the last one is called a plant. The congregation is called a plant. The chosen few are called the fruit that come out of the branch of that plant. And the branch is also the last manifestation, the second coming. So there is no doubt, or there shouldn't be any doubt, that all throughout scriptures, humans are represented by plants, trees. Their actions are their fruits. When it comes to the physical, their fruit is their children. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for Yahweh Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. And to follow the same interpretation because of the question by Celio, the fact that there was no man to till the ground, as we see, man is going to be formed until the 7th verse. So since there was not a man previously to the 7th verse, in the 6th verse we are told that vapor came out of the earth to water the whole face of the Adamah. Meaning that was the way in which the ground gave fruit previously to rain. Before rain, water came up for the earth to give fruit. That is the literal. In the deeper that we were speaking about, it is basically that before men, there was something that made Adamah to give fruit. And that's something what those who believe that Lilith is an entity that was created at this time, they believe it was Samael, the one that caused Adamah to give fruit. That's why you can also research it, and I hope you do. Lilith is called Samael's wife. It is said that when Lilith rejected Adam, she became the wife of Samael. And that's why she's the mother of the demons. Because she gets impregnated by Samael and she gives birth to demons by using the seed of Adam. So he sends her minions to collect the sexual energy when a man has an emission at night. Most of the time, or many times, is because of a succubus that was sent to gather that energy, sexual energy, which according to ancient writings is given to Lilith so that Lilith can give birth to demons. Demons, unlike angels, die. During this time, they die like humans. So she has to keep giving birth. By the way, the curse that was given to her was that every night many of her children die. But there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. And Yahweh Elohim formed men of the dust of the ground. So isn't it funny that, as we know, Eve, Hava, came from Adam. But Adam came from the ground. Adamah. So from the Adamah was taken, Yahweh took dust to make Adam. So from the Adamah came Adam. And from Adam came Hava. From the man came the woman. So, going back, number 7. And Yahweh Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. In Hebrew, this is very interesting also. In Hebrew, this verse, Veyatzar, and formed Yahweh Elohim et ha'adam. It is once again important to mention the word et. The word et in Hebrew doesn't have a translation in English nor in Spanish, and I believe in no other language than in Hebrew. Et is formed by the letters Aleph and Taf, first and last of the Hebrew Aleph Bet. I already explained a lot about it on the first chapter, where it starts, in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth. The scripture says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim. In the beginning Elohim created et, the heavens, and et, the earth. So before creating the heavens, Yahweh created the first and the last. Before creating the heavens, Yahweh formed, or Yahweh begot Messiah, first and last. And then through Messiah, the word and the voice, Yahweh created the heavens. And then through Messiah, the Word and the voice created the earth. Now, before creating men, Et is mentioned once again, which means that before making Adam, Yahweh begot the first and the last as the model that he would use to create a physical man on this earth. So Yahweh begot men in his reality, in his heaven, the third heaven, as a prototype, as the prototype that he would use when he said, let us make men in our image and in our likeness. So he made men, one could say, in the image of the first and the likeness of the last. He made Adam in the image of Messiah, in the likeness of Yahweh, in the sense that the soul is the image, the spirit, which gives life to the body, is the likeness, because Yahweh is a spirit. So, and form Yahweh Elohim Et, first and last, the Adam, the men. Here, the way it says it is, and Yahweh Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground. Afar min adama, min ha'adama, and breath here the word is nafach, the fact that he breath into his nostrils. The nostrils were what Yahweh used to make the spirit go into Adam, because of our five senses. The smell is the most spiritual sense of all. So that's why Yahweh used the nose. That's one of the reasons why Yahweh used the nose, for the spirit to get into men. We are to discern spirits with the nose, spiritual nose. But the nose, the physical nose, represents what we need to do in the spiritual sense with it, because it has two nostrils, as in the good and the bad, or right and wrong. And what we smell is the wind, the air, which represents the spirit, because it is invisible, but we can perceive it by using the nose. And that is why it is called nose, because it knows. So that's why also, when it comes to knowledge, when a person knows something, that's why it is said like that, knows and knows, because I know. And so that's why Yahweh used the nose of the man to let the spirit enter the body. It is the most spiritual sense of the five. And so when Yahweh sent his spirit, he basically sent, it says here, the breath of life. Neshama, Chaim. Neshama is what normally is translated as breath. Yahweh sent of his breath. When the breath travels, when the breath comes out of the mouth, it becomes a wind. Wind in Hebrew is ruach, which also is translated as spirit. So when Yahweh sent his neshama, it traveled as ruach, entered the nose of Adam. And when the ruach of Yahweh mixed with the dust of the ground, when the ruach of Yahweh entered the body, the mixing of the ruach and the material, the spirit and the physical, there was a new creation within the body, which was the nephesh, which is normally translated as the soul. That's why it says, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. The neshama came out of the mouth of Yahweh, traveled as a ruach, entered the body, and by entering the body, got mixed with it, and a nephesh was created, a living soul. Nefesh chaya, a living soul. The mixing of the heaven and the earth created the soul of the man. The nefesh, which is the lower part of the soul. The nefesh is in the blood. There are two parts in the nefesh, a higher and a lower. The nefesh ha-Elohit, the nefesh ha-Behamit. The nefesh ha-Elohit is the celestial soul, which is eternal, comes directly from heaven. Is basically the one that came through the ruach, the part of the ruach that became nefesh, while the part of the body that became nefesh by mixing the ruach in the body, the part of the body that became nefesh is called the nefesh ha-Behamit, which is the nefesh, the animal nefesh, the animal soul, which is temporal, and it is connected to the body. So that is why the body has all the desires and well, the powers also that it has. I mean, when it comes to powers, obviously, I mean the things that we do with our body are handled or managed by that part of the soul, the animal part. So the nefesh is the lower part, which divides in two, a heavenly one and an earthly one. The earthly comes from the body, the heavenly comes from the ruach. Like I said, when the ruach entered the body, they mixed and created the nefesh, which has two parts. Hope that's clear. And Elohim, and Yahweh Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And Yahweh Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden. And Yahweh Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden. And there he put the man whom he had formed. So he created paradise. Eden is paradise. Eden is what is how is pronounced. Eden. And the word Eden means pleasure. Basically was a pleasant place. A place where all you could feel was pleasure. That's why it's called paradise. So, and Yahweh Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden, in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. When Elohim created man, when he formed man, as we can see here, the garden had not been planted yet, meaning Adam was not created in the garden. Adam was formed and then the garden was created. That is important because it's as Yahweh. Yahweh doesn't have a place where he is. He is the place where everything exists because he is the only one that exists. He's the place where everything exists. That's why he is called actually the place. In Hebrew, Hamakom is one of the names that, or titles, that are given to the Almighty. Hamakom means the place. Because if he was in a place, then that would mean that the place is greater than him, since it can contain him, which is not possible. Therefore, we are seeing here a reflection of that understanding. Adam was formed, and then on a space in which he worked, in which he lived. He didn't work yet. In which he lived and felt pleasure in every way. So Yahweh, when he decided to create, he created space in which he could form humans, those who would give pleasure to him. Another way of seeing it is when Yahweh created the third heaven, which is where happiness and joy and love and understanding and knowledge all are one and live together in the third heaven. So it's basically Yahweh making a reflection of that. First Adam as Yahweh, for Adam was made in the image and likeness, and then the garden as the third heaven, which is filled with pleasure, with good things. But after that comes the sin, which creates death and this reality. Just like after Yahweh made the third heaven, something happened, which we will discuss eventually, which formed the second heaven. And in that second heaven, the space was filled with darkness, and that darkness became the illusion that we know as evil. So everything that has happened on earth and that we are reading in Genesis is a reflection of what happened in the third heaven and eventually in the second heaven. Another thing is that it is said that when Yahweh formed man, he took dust from the four corners of the earth, so that no man would feel like he doesn't belong in any place of earth, or that he is different from another person or another human. We are all one. We were made from the dust of all the earth. That's why we were eventually dispersed to all the four corners of the earth. So, verse 9. And out of the ground made Yahweh Elohim to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight. And out of the ground made Yahweh Elohim to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight. What I was saying previously, it continues, and we could keep going and going with that interpretation. I'm just going to mention, maybe for today at least, the last one. Here, when it says that from the ground Yahweh made every tree that is pleasant to the sight, as we know, the tree of knowledge of good and evil was created at that moment, and it is also said that when Eve saw the tree, she saw that it was pleasant to the eyes. So it is mentioned here also. There are some who believe, and this is a stretch, but I mention it because it has a little bit of truth, and maybe the stretch is just a way to understand it in a simple, clearer way. There are some who believe that the trees were angels. It's not very far. It's not far from truth. It's an interpretation. I believe that there was a literal tree, and I believe that there was a spirit connected to each of those trees. So by eating of a tree was basically like receiving the spirit that was connected to that tree. As we know, the tree of life is Yahushua the Messiah. The tree of life was there, so Messiah was there. But in a different way. I want to make that clear than what many people would think, I guess, that they would imagine the Messiah just standing in the middle of the garden. That's not what I'm saying. Is the potential to receive eternal life, which is only received through the Messiah, was there within the tree of life, which has as its roots Messiah himself. So here, some believe that the trees were referring to angels with certain capabilities or powers, abilities that when a man would eat would receive. And that the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they believe it was the fallen angel Satan, and that when Eve ate of the fruit, they believed that she was actually having sex with the fallen angel. And I'm mentioning that because, like I said, even this verse they translated like what I've just explained, and I did say that it has a little bit of truth. In that part, I will explain it, but I don't think we're gonna have time tonight. So I hope you will remain with us, and eventually you will see what I mean. So in verse 9, it says, "And out of the ground made Yahweh Elohim to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, and good for food. In the beginning, according to the Midrash also, the plan of Yahweh was for the trees to taste good, from the fruit to the wood. Yahweh wanted the wood to taste good. But because of the sin, only the fruit became edible." Also, it is said that Yahweh saw that people were going to cut trees eventually. If trees were tasty, even the wood, then there would be no trees eventually on earth, because men would cut them all up. So Yahweh thought that it was better if only the fruit had a taste, a good taste. So that's why it says here that he made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. He's saying the tree was good for food, not only the fruit was good for food. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Like, okay, there's so much that I want to say, and there is, like, most of it is a bit complicated, and I really do not want to confuse nobody, but I really feel like I have to say it. I mean, we do these studies for a reason, for all this to be recorded. Like I said, and I said that there were some people who thought that, because I don't believe the 100% of it. They believe that trees were angels. Like I said, the tree of life represents the Messiah. That's why when he died on a tree. He was hung from a tree, from wood. And we are supposed to eat of him. He said, "This is my body, eat of it. This is my blood, drink it." So when we eat of the sacrifice of Messiah the Lamb, when we believe in him, we are eating of him, and we are receiving eternal life. So the tree of life is the Messiah, Yahushua. The actual tree of knowledge, like I have explained before, is the second coming. Is the last. Basically, that's what it represents, because he's the one that will give knowledge of Messiah, gives testimony of Yahushua, whom already came, but for some reason people are worshiping another one. And that reason is the apostasy and the sin and other things, but it's just amazing. So the tree of life is he who gives us the eternal life. The tree of knowledge is the one that gives knowledge of the Father through the Son. But knowledge has to do with the good and the evil. That's why it's called the knowledge of good and evil. That is why Yahushua, who is the life and life is good, Yahushua came with no sin, through a virgin, to die without sin, to pay for our sins. The last one, since he is the tree of good and evil, before becoming good through Messiah, he would fall in confusion. He would be born in confusion and therefore fall in sin, knowing evil, so that he could then choose good. And by having that knowledge, that experience, he could bring the chosen few to Messiah for him to give them life. And that's why in Judaism, even though they don't understand this that I just explained, they say that the tree of life and the tree of knowledge have the same root. The same root. The problem, like I said, of eating the tree of knowledge was, well, there were two main issues of why it was a sin and why many bad things came to humanity because of that sin. Two main reasons why eating the fruit of knowledge was a sin. First, because it was forbidden. And that should be the only one, but I'll explain the second one. It was forbidden. Yahweh said don't do it. They did it. They disobeyed, and therefore that was a sin. Disobeying was a sin, but at the same time was the moment when the free will was activated. Was the only way that free will could exist, if there was an option to not do our sovereign's will, our creator's will. He allowed us to do our own will. So when Adam used it, he found out that that is not the right way to do things. Because when our will is different than his will, we end up in a bad place. Bad consequences. So through that knowledge, through the knowledge of evil that we experience when we disobey, we understand the importance of obeying. So that's why it was necessary to have the knowledge. The second reason why it was wrong or why it was bad to eat of the fruit of knowledge is because man should have eaten from the tree of life and then from the tree of knowledge. That would have been perfect, because the tree of life is the truth. So if we would have known the truth and then have knowledge of good and evil, we would give priority to truth before to what feels good or what feels bad. We would understand that truth is more important than feelings. So by having the truth, we would choose the good knowledge and reject the evil when we would acquire it. But by grabbing knowledge before truth caused that basically made it so that nowadays people believe that the truth is not absolute. They believe that there is no absolute truth, and that is such a huge lie, which came to be because men took knowledge of good and evil. So when they do evil but feel good, they think that is true, not understanding that evil is evil, good is good. Sometimes we go through tribulation which feels bad but is good for us. Sometimes there are things which feel good but are bad for us. That's why we need the truth to separate, to know what is really good, what is really evil, to know the good in what feels bad, and to know the bad in what feels good. I hope I'm not confusing anybody. I really hope so, because that was very important, I think. We're about to finish. I'm just going to read this verse again. And out of the ground may Yahweh Elohim to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight. Pleasant to the sight. Angels are pleasant to the sight. That's why Satan himself transforms into an angel of light, meaning he becomes pleasant to the sight. So much so that people want to follow him. People think he is. People think he is the Most High. like I was saying, people believe that the tree of knowledge was Satan, and that's why she mixed with him. Actually, what Satan did as the serpent was make Eve want to eat the fruit of knowledge before the fruit of life. That was what the serpent did to turn Eve from the right way, from obeying Adam in that case, because it was Adam who told her not to eat, who was told previously by Elohim. So the knowledge is important, is good. Yahweh is knowledge. But Yahweh was letting us know, if you eat of that, you're going to feel bad. If you eat of that, you're going to taste death. If you eat of that, you're going to know what is evil. And that is bad. So Yahweh was giving us not only a commandment, but an advice. When men do not follow, when a man doesn't follow the commandment of Yahweh, if he's smart, he will realize the consequence of doing that, and therefore he will learn that the dumbest thing that a man can do is disobeying his creator. Like I was saying, in Judaism, they say the tree of life and the tree of knowledge have one root, as in the first and last are connected in Yahweh, because at the end will be one. Just like Yahushua was sacrificed for us to eat of him, testimony, believe it, get eternal life. Through the last, those who believe in the witnesses will receive the knowledge that they were expecting, that they wanted, that they were asking from the Father. And also, of course, they will know the Father. Yahushua said, "Why do you call me good? There is only one who is good, the Father who is in heaven." So, the knowledge of good is basically the last who comes to give knowledge of the Father, who is good. And at the same time, give knowledge of evil, Satan, the real Satan. For instance, most people worship Satan. They don't realize it, but they worship Satan. When they invoke God, according to scriptures, God is Satan, according to Isaiah 65:11. Not all translations make it clear. Some do. If yours doesn't, just find a concordance or a Hebrew, but maybe a concordance. The word fortune in Isaiah 65:11 in Hebrew is God. And if you see the context, it's talking about Satan. So Satan is called God in Hebrew. So people who invoke God and worship God, they are worshiping Satan according to scriptures. Jehovah means behold, ruin, destruction. Lord means Baal. In Hebrew is Baal. So all of the titles that most people use, they are actually calling Satan. So when the last appears, he basically will give knowledge of who is actually Satan and who is actually the Creator Almighty, Yahweh. Showing, hey, this one that you have been worshiping was Satan. Now worship the real Creator. That is knowledge of good and evil. There is another interpretation or another book that if we have the time, if the Almighty gives us the time to read as much as I would like, eventually we may read some of that book. It's part of the Gnostic books. And I mention it because it's interesting and it does fit with scriptures and with many other books. There was a spirit, according to a book, there was the spirit of wisdom which Elohim sent, and through which he created everything on the way down, which, after having given knowledge to Adam, knowledge as in reasoning, which humans have, entered the tree of knowledge. And when Eve and Adam ate of it, they were actually eating of wisdom. That's why tree of knowledge. I know knowledge and wisdom are two different things, but obviously they are very connected. They're similar. We need knowledge. Basically, wisdom is first, then understanding comes second, knowledge comes third when it comes to from the Father to humans. But if we want to go up, we basically look for knowledge. The knowledge, if we process it, should give us understanding. And by having understanding, we become wise. So it depends on how you see it, the perspective from Yahweh to humans or humans to Yahweh. However, still, Scripture says that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of Yahweh. So if we fear Yahweh, then we will receive wisdom. When we receive wisdom, we study Scriptures and all of a sudden we understand it. The more we study, the more knowledge we gain. Therefore, the more we understand and the wiser we become. So that is one of the ways that this is explained, or why Adam and Eve, when they ate, they became wiser. Because there was a spirit there that entered them after they ate. And there's more to it. Okay. The flesh is happy with the evil. That's right. That's why Shaul said, "O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death?" Yep. The body of this death. This death. This body is for this world. That's why flesh and blood will not enter the kingdom. So this body is a body of death. That's why the body pulls us to sinning, because the wage of sin is death. So the body doesn't want to die, but all it wants is what has to do with death. All it knows is death. And when I say that it doesn't want to die, it's clear when when one feels like is in danger, the body either plays death when just stops working, like when it's in shock or something, or runs or attacks, basically to save itself. Like I said, the nefesh, the animal nefesh, the lower part of the nefesh, is the temporal part. That part knows that it's temporal, so does everything in the world that it think it can do not to die. It's afraid. That's where fear comes. Not the fear of Yahweh, the fear of death, the fear of any type of fear that is not the fear of Yahweh comes from the flesh. So let's say, for whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. The scripture is hard, but is what will give us life. That's right. Yep. Normally, when you understand that this life doesn't mean anything in the eternal sense, meaning most people that think that this life is all they got, they go crazy trying to make this life last, trying to have success in the way that they think that success comes, or trying to have the success that they think that is success, like having a lot of money, having a family, which obviously a good family is part of success, but I mean like just having a couple, or maybe like nowadays they just have a pet or something. The fact of having maybe a career, like having gone to college, a bunch of things that people think is success in this world, but after attaining them, they realize that they still feel empty. After getting a bunch of money, many people realize that that is nothing. So those who try to win, well, in this case, as it is written, save his life shall lose it. Those who are so worried about this life will not gain the eternal one. And there are some people who will, because they are justified because of their faith, But the only way that they will enter that life is by losing this one. So the only way that they will enter is by dying during this lifetime. While on the other hand, those who realize that this life is nothing compared to the eternal, they give it away to Yahweh, to other people, by helping, by teaching, by studying, basically not focusing on this world, on this society, focusing on the spiritual world. So the people of the world look at us and they're like, this guy is crazy. What is he doing with his life? He's wasting it. And I say it because I'm sure a lot of people say that about me. So when you give your life, you're not focused on having a lot of money, on having a lot of fame, of being popular, etc. When you're not focused on that, when you are willing to die, when you say, Yahweh, if it's your will, you can take my life right away because I just want to be with you. When you are willing to die, Yahweh will make sure you don't. And he will transform that person during the harvest and take it to heaven. And then back to earth to destroy Satan during Armageddon. While those who are so afraid of dying, but they don't read scriptures, they don't pray, they don't look for the Almighty, because they're not afraid, they do not fear Yahweh, so they don't have wisdom. They are afraid of the devil. They are afraid of death. They're afraid of hell. That makes them act wrong. And when they act wrong, they're going to end up dying. Because fear is not good. And as we know, when love enters us, fear disappears. But love is Yahweh. So if you don't have Yahweh, you're going to be filled with fear. And when you're filled with fear, you want to save your life. And people who want to save their life will do anything for it, as putting the mark of the beast, for instance, when they come to offer it to them. So yeah. The ground made Yahweh Elohim to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. Good for food. The literal, a fruit is good for food, is very good. We should eat every day, we should eat fruits. So literal is very simple. The spiritual, however, means that those entities or persons like Messiah, first and last, and angels, or perhaps first and last, 144,000, which are trees according to the book of Revelation. The fruit that comes from them is good for food, but food not for the body, but for the soul. Just like you eat a fruit, literal fruit from a tree, and helps the body grow, maintain, get energy. When you eat a fruit of true doctrine, your soul gets strength and grows. So we got to understand that also. Good for food. The doctrine that was given by Messiah and the doctrine that is to be given by the two witnesses is good for food, for everybody to eat it. Just like when Joseph sold food to the rest of the world. That represents when the last descendant of Joseph will come to earth as the witness like Moshe and feed the whole world through his teaching. Also, it is saying good for food, and it is including the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So right there we have it. Yahweh did not say that the tree of knowledge was bad. He never said that the tree of knowledge was bad. He actually said that the tree of knowledge was good. And this is like the third time that he said it. Like you can see if you saw the previous videos. Yahweh said many times that the tree of knowledge is good. He didn't say it directly. But this, it doesn't get more direct than this. Good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So the tree of good and evil is not bad. It's good for food. However, the order in which they ate of the fruits was not the best one. And that caused 6,000 years of sin to manifest. Even though it was, when he disobeyed Adam, it was supposed to happen. Yahweh knew it would happen. It was part of the plan. That's why he created everything in 6 days, because there would be 6 days of work. Work meaning improvement, of work on ourselves, on our souls. Learn evil to stop it. Learn what is evil to reject it. 6,000 years. So it was all necessary. That's why I want to make sure everybody understands the tree of knowledge was good for food. That is something that I think most people have not seen or don't believe because of the normal Christian doctrine, which teaches a lot of fear. And that's what I was saying. If you were going to a church or are receiving a doctrine which somehow causes you to fear, that is not a good sign. The knowledge that Yahweh gives us should give us actually hope, understanding. When a person doesn't have understanding, the person fears. As you know, man fear what he doesn't know. Normally people fear what they don't know. So if you come to know, all of a sudden you stop fearing. Because when you know Yahweh, you are filled with love. And when you love, you don't have fear, because love and fear are opposites. Fear is the lack of love. And the last thing I want to say, and it's just basically for you to remember it for next week. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden. So in the middle of the garden was the tree of life, meaning the most important of all trees, the tree of life. Of course, if you don't have life, you cannot enjoy any other tree. If you don't have life, you don't have anything. So life, eternal life, was in the middle. Just like out of all teachings, out of all men, the most important is Messiah, Yahushua, because he gives us life. Right in the midst of the garden. And remember that, because he will become important later on. And the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Second. Tree of life. Second, tree of knowledge. First and last. But the first is necessary to be able to get the last. However, they first ate of the last, and then Yahweh had to hide the first and bring it in the 4th millennium. And after one eats of Yahushua, can get the last finally. When it comes to these end times, people will receive the knowledge of good by the witness like Moshe, who will teach of Yahushua, the tree of life. Others will choose the tree of death, meaning the false Messiah. And when they choose the false Messiah, they will allow the false Messiah to put a mark in their hand or their head, that becoming the fruit of knowledge of evil. Because then they will know what evil is. Then they will know what pain is, because they will be thrown in the lake of fire for eternity. So we're going to leave it here for tonight. I hope it was good. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope